Morning. I have just a few little things to say before we get into our lesson. My wife gave me something to do as well. These little books here. We've got these for the boys. Amanda made them. She made them at Spring Creek for several of the young folks at Spring Creek. And she's offering to make them for any of your young folks here that you might want to have them keep busy and something they can kind of keep up with the worship and what's going on in it. It's called My Worship Notes. It's Bible verses that they heard, songs that we sang, my favorite song that we sang, and it's just a 3-ring binder. And she likes to do the camo, which I like. We're kind of camo oriented. And she did this one for David. She's done some for girls in pink camo. So there's variations. And if you don't want camo, I'm sure she'll just give you a plain old binder or do something else. But she's offering to make those. There's a sign-up list in the back. As well, if you want to look at what would be inside the notebook, there's copies of these back there on purple paper that you can pick up as well. So parents, be thinking about that. David, come get this one from me, son, so I don't leave it up here. All right. We're having a cookout tonight. I'm looking forward to it. Bobby informed me there was a big pot of lonely beans that had no cornbread to go with it. And so if somebody could, we need a couple folks, couple men or women to sign up and bring some cornbread. I almost volunteered when he said it, but I'm not so swift on cornbread, all right? I can't get Jiffy to work out. So if you can make some good cornbread, we're going to have a giant pot of ham and beans that could use some cornbread. I'm looking forward to it, looking forward to the activities we're going to do and the fellowship that goes along with it. Very much looking forward to that. So if you're here and you didn't know about that, or you're here and you're a guest, you're invited. You don't even have to bring any cornbread, and you can still come. All right. I think that's it. I've made all my announcements, I believe. You ever been riding along with somebody? I was riding out into the middle of nowhere with someone. Now listen to how I said that. The fellow that gave us the instructions, and the guy that I was riding with is not here today, but anyway, we were riding out in the middle of nowhere, and his dad had given him instructions. He said, it's up past those curves. Well, we were going from Nashville all the way past Nashville, all the way out into the country, and when we were riding out there were a lot of curves. He said, it's just up there by those curves. And then we went to a place, and this is a different destination that the same man gave us instructions to. It's in the middle of nowhere. Now, where's the middle of nowhere? We worry or we think about it, and I forgot we're filming this, so I started walking around. But we think about instructions. We talk about some place that you can't get there from here, right? Think about the way we describe things and directions and being lost. How many times have we been lost? Amanda it drove her crazy because we'd be driving somewhere, and we'd leave somewhere, and maybe I didn't know the way, but I knew the direction. It's south somewhere. We're going to hit a road somewhere south that's going to take us west, that'll take us to our destination. And it drove her crazy because I wouldn't have directions. I'd just say, we're heading in the right direction. I know that much. Then there's other ways of being lost, though. You know, at the tomb of the unnamed soldier, the soldiers walk 21 steps. On the 21st step, he turns and faces the tomb he is guarding. He does this for 21 seconds. The soldier then turns to head back the other direction. He moves his rifle to his outside shoulder away from the tomb. After 21 seconds, he walks 21 steps and repeats the process again and again. Since July 1st, 1937, a relatively small number of hand-picked soldiers have stood guard over the tomb of the unknown soldier. The tough duty is not for everyone. Over 80% of the soldiers who try out for guard duty at the tomb do not make it. Each soldier must have strong military bearing, discipline, stamina, and present an outstanding soldierly appearance. Each sentinel must be able to flawlessly perform seven different types of walks, honors, and ceremonies. They must retain vast amounts of knowledge concerning the tomb, Arlington National Cemetery, the United States Army, and their unit. They can have no military or civilian convictions for violating the law. They must score a minimum of 250 on the Army physical fitness test. Their height must be between 5'11" and 6'4" inches. They need a 30-inch waist and be able to present a soldierly appearance in the Army blue uniform. The tomb guards make personal sacrifices to have the honor of serving in this special role. They work on a team rotation similar to that of firemen in a firehouse. Those soldiers who serve well for at least 9 months are rewarded with a special badge to wear on their uniform that acknowledges their service at the tomb of the unknowns. If they ever bring shame on the tomb that they guard or otherwise fail in their duty, they are stripped of the badge and the honor that goes with it. They've served through snowstorms, hurricanes, falling trees around them, and on they serve. And they're serving those who were lost. Those men that were lost, and we don't know where they are, or we don't know the names of some of those who were deceased. They serve because it's an honor. But what about us? Are we not fighting a war of a spiritual warfare? Are we not at risk? Is man not at risk of being lost in that same way? We are. The Bible in Luke chapter 15 talks and tells us or illustrates to us ways in which we can be lost. You bring up the idea of Luke 15 or being lost, and everybody's mind goes immediately to the prodigal son. And we'll get there. But there's some other lessons in this chapter I want us to look at. All right. I can be lost, number one, by carelessness. Look at verse 4 of Luke 15, 4 through 7 with me. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he loses one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. I say to you that likewise there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 persons who need no repentance. You ever thought about why he used sheep or discussed or described us as sheep? There's a great significance in it. It helps us understand this situation. Sometimes sheep are careless. I know one time we walked into a lot and there was some sheep there, and one of them just ran into a post and killed himself. He just got careless, I guess, got scared, and was just trying to do whatever he could do to get away. Sometimes sheep, when they're out in the pasture, they can wander away. They can wander and find themselves in a bad situation. They just feed away from the others, and suddenly they've had their head down, they're munching, they're going along, and they're lost. Some Christians sometimes feed away. We get involved in some type of doctrine. Maybe we get involved in something worldly, and suddenly it's infringing on Sunday, it's infringing on Wednesday night, and carelessly we just wander off. We just get to where we just slip away. And we find ourselves lost. We find ourselves far away from what we should be doing. We have to stay attached, involved, and committed to the work of the church to be part of the flock. Sheep can be lost and helpless to do anything about it. What happens if you find yourself in a situation where you are not part of the congregation, you're not part of the church? You've separated yourself from being part of the church. You've separated yourself from the goings-on at church. and you realize, you recognize that you're not attached to the work anymore. You don't even know really what's going on all the time. I have to be willing to let the shepherd guide me back. You know, in verse 5 of Luke 15, it says, "And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing." Can we let God bring us back, carry us back to the flock? You know, sometimes I can feel like I've gone so far, I can't get back. I've done so much to separate myself from what I ought to be doing that I just don't have the humility to come back. You don't have to. God humbled Himself enough to die on the cross for you and offers that invitation again and again that I can come back. And He carries me back on His back. I have to be willing to let the shepherd carry me back. A sheep is something that's defined, as a creature. They are meek, timid, submissive, and it's some traits that Christians ought to have, especially when we find ourselves in trouble. I need to let Him work in me, don't I? I need to let God help me not be lost because I'm careless. He says in John 10, verses 14 and 15, "I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep." Whatever is necessary to get me back, He's already done. He's already accomplished. Don't be lost because of carelessness. Don't be lost because of carelessness. Notice one more thought with me, though, on this idea of carelessness. That even while the sheep were lost, they were still sheep. "Rejoice with me," verse 6, "for I have found my sheep which was lost." The shepherd still regards his sheep as his sheep, even when they're not with the flock. If I lose my keys to my truck and I can't find them, even if somebody else finds them, they're still my keys, aren't they? They won't do anybody else any good unless they come and get my truck. But they're still my keys. When I'm lost and I find myself lost in a careless way, or I know someone who's lost in a careless way, they're still God's children. I can't let it remain to be the case. I've got to help the shepherd bring them back, and if it's me, I've got to let the shepherd bring me back. The death on the cross brings me back. What about commonness? I don't want to be lost because of commonness. Look at verses 8 through 10. Christ is teaching about these Pharisees and scribes. In verse 2 it says, "They complained, saying, 'This man receives sinners and eats with them.'" What's He doing? I don't understand why He would even be involved with people like this. So He's teaching him, and first He teaches about sheep and the carelessness that goes along with being a sheep. Now He's going to teach about commonness, the commonness of a coin. "Or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it?" Now, obviously, these are very valuable coins. She's only got 10 of them, and they're of great value to her. If you only had 10 coins and you went down to 9, you'd feel like you lost something, right? Anybody ever feel that way when you get your life going and some kind of blow comes along and takes a portion of your money, takes a portion of your goods you weren't expecting? It's the opposite of a windfall. You lose a lot. It hurts, doesn't it? Well, this woman, she had 10 of them and she lost one. And it was valuable to her, but she'd obviously treated it as it was common and had simply lost it in the house. And she searched carefully until she finds it. And when she has found it, verse 9, she calls her friends and neighbors together, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the piece which I lost." "Likewise, I say unto you," Christ says, "there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." Notice a common thread here. Every single person is worth saving. Every single soul matters to God and the shepherd. But she lost this coin over commonness. A coin, why use a coin to make a point? What's significant about it? Let me suggest we read Genesis chapter 1, 26 and verse 27 and see if this doesn't answer our question. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion over it, the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, why is man so valuable? We answer that by asking, why is a coin so valuable? You know, I could have a piece, in the old days, you could have a piece of silver and you could measure the weight of that, or gold, and you could measure the weight of that, and that's how you could pay for something. Well, it's this much weight in gold to pay for that. Then at some point, coinage and money took on the impressions of the leaders. They would have Caesar stamped on a coin. That would make it a certain value. So it was the weight of the coin and the value of it. Nowadays, our coins aren't worth as much by their weight. They're only worth what we have in gold. And then I'm not going to have a political argument, but I don't know how much that's accurate anymore. But what makes something valuable is what's impressed upon it. A piece of paper with the face of a dead president on it is valuable because someone else says so, because there's something backing it up. We have the likeness of God inside of us. We are made in His image. That eternal part of us is made after His likeness. That gives it intrinsic value. It's always going to be valuable. And so when I look and I see the thought of commonness, I can never accept, I can never let circumstances dictate that I am not valuable. God has made me so. God has made you so because He's made you in that likeness, in that image of Him. And so to let a soul become a commonplace thing, to let sin be commonplace, is like this woman dropping that coin, and it's just common. Well, it's just common. It's lost. It's something every day that you see. The coin is useless while it's lost as well. What about a coin taken out of circulation? How much value does it have if you lost it in a creek? Or you put it in a drawer and forgot it was there? The value's still there, but what can you do with it? Nothing. Nothing. I've got to hold on to what God has given me. She's apparently used to handling money at some point, and this one coin slipped away. We can be cruising along in life, treating our faith like it's a habit or just something we do. I want to live faithfully. I don't want my faith to be common. I don't want my life to be common. All right, because of time, we'll paraphrase the prodigal son a little bit. Otherwise, I'll go quite long this morning. Verses 11 through 24, the prodigal son, you know, he has a right to some of the things he asked for. He was the younger son, and he had about a third that the inheritance would be his. And he finally, by choice, point number 3, what if I'm lost by choice? He chooses to leave what his father has given him, to leave this home, this established life, and go out into the world. And his father gives him that right, gives him the necessary tools, enables him to leave and to go out. But he goes out into the world, and what's he do? He wastes it in riotous living, doesn't he? He wastes it in riotous living. He's not lost because he became careless. He's not lost because he's common. He was lost because he chose to be lost. Some people, out of pure rebellion, want to get out of the house, want to get away from rule. And you know, it's a lot easier to tear something down than it is to build something up. It's much easier to tear something down than it is to build it up. Leaving God can be that way. I'm just tired of trying to be so good all the time. And we have this mentality that I need to do it on my own, or I want to do it on my own, and we choose to leave. And then soon we find out, if not in the end, we find out that it's not all it's cracked up to be, being away from God, being away from His church. Proverbs 4 and verse 23 says, we need to keep our heart. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. I need to keep my choices very clear. God first, family second, and everything else comes behind that. God's first, though. And I don't get lost because of life's choices. Now, what about that older brother? Our last point for the morning. What about what if I'm lost because of corruption? You remember what happened to the older brother? Verses 25 and following, you find him. He was in the field in verse 25, and he came and he drew near to the house, and he heard the music and the dancing. And you know what happened for the younger son? They said, "Go and find a fat calf, the fattest calf, and bring it in. We're going to have a celebration." Right? The older brother, he never left. He stayed there diligently, working and working. But what happened to his heart? When his brother came back, he was mad at him. Look at everything you wasted. Look at everything you've lost. You ought to be punished for this. And then he finds, coming in from a hard day of work, obviously, there's dancing and celebration going on. So he called the servant and asked what all these things meant. And he said unto him, "Your brother has come, and because we have received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf." Verse 28, but he was angry and would not go in. You ever let anger get in the way of a good decision? He was unhappy because his brother was so easily forgiven. You have to think about this. The brother had wasted so very much of the hard work and time that had gone into things. And he says in complaint to his father, so he answered and said unto him, verse 29, "Lo, these many years I've been serving you. I never transgressed your commandments at any time, and you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours came," he didn't say my brother, you notice that. "But as soon as this son came, who was devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him." Now watch what the father says in verse 31. "And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours." He tells him in verse 32, "It was right that we should make merry and be glad for your brother." He doesn't say my son. He says, you remember who this is. Your brother was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. I can't let corruption cause me to be lost. We shouldn't treat the Lord like politicians. What have you done for me lately? God is always faithful. His invitation is always there. And I can't allow my emotions in this life to corrupt me in such a fashion that I'm lost. How many times has someone left the church, separated themselves from one congregation, maybe stopped going altogether because they had issue with someone else in the congregation? Isn't that silly? Isn't that silly? We're all going in the same direction if we're being faithful to God. Now, are issues going to come up? Absolutely. Guaranteed. Church is made up of people. There's going to be problems. You know, when everything feels like it's going perfect, I get a little nervous. Right? And if I ever find a place, and if you ever find a place that's perfect, don't go. Right? You'll mess it up. We're not perfect. But I can't let emotions dictate how I worship. I can't let emotions make me forget about the blessings that I have. Don't be lost because of carelessness. You just wandered away. Don't be lost because of commonness, because it's just habit. I do it every first day of the week I'm there, every Wednesday night I'm there, and it's just ho-hum, and I never do anything else. Don't be lost by choice. Say, I'm tired of this, because I promise you'll wake up one day and you'll find life is a lot harder without God, without hope of heaven. And finally, don't let emotions corrupt you. Don't let desires corrupt you and be lost because of corruption of some form or fashion. This morning, maybe you're here and you find yourself in a life that you've decided, I am convicted to obey the gospel and be a child of His. You know, even when we're lost, even when we walk away or we stumble away, maybe we've obeyed the gospel and we find ourselves, I've wandered off in some other direction. You're still His. And by way of creation, every child of God, or every person is a child of God in one way or shape, form, or fashion. So this morning, won't you come back? Let Him carry you back. He carried the way of the cross so He could carry us. If you have a need this morning, let me encourage you to come as we stand and as we sing.